Hi again, class. As you know, we're now kind of moving on to the final part of our report, and that's kind of our final summary. Now, what we've already done to date is we've gone ahead and we've added a hypothesis. So we've kind of predicted how we and our subject were going to use media, when they were going to use it, what types they would, and why. And then we started our 8-day tracking of our use of media, and that's what we use the journals for. From that, we were able to pull out the data, make some comparisons, look at the similarities and differences, and then report back on those similarities and differences. We tried to explain them using the previous lessons that we've covered, how our use of media might have been related to access and exposure, how it might have been related to our social generations and our demographic information, or how the uses and gratification theory of how people use and need media supported those same ideas. Now, we completed 3 separate analysis sections, one for each of the categories you selected. And now that that's completed, we're actually drafting our final summary. And the final summary is where we've kind of linked it all back together. We show how all of this contributes to our use of media, and it also shows us why looking at and examining our media interactions and these patterns are significant or important. So that's why we're doing it. Now, what we've done before here is, in our previous class, we brainstormed as a class some of the reasons why it's important to consider our use of media. And that is, it allows us, for one, to see how it affects and changes us as people. So, for example, if all our now schoolwork is being done via OneNote, then that's going to affect us and change the way we use digital media, perhaps to, well, for instance, listening to this right now and deciding how to use this information for your assessment. It gives us also an opportunity, perhaps, to actually see how much we use. How much time are we actually spending on these forums? And is it because we need it or because we want it? And that links back to those uses and gratification theories, the needs of media. We can also consider how these patterns reflect how effectively we use it. So are we actually using our time and our media to the best purposes? Or are we using it to improve our habits or behavior? Or has it become a distraction? Has it become just another easy way to procrastinate? Looking at our use of media can also allow us to perhaps anticipate or kind of predict what changes might still appear in the future. And how do we prepare for these changes? If technology is rapidly improving, and technology is the designated medium to get these messages across, how do we prepare for it? Do we need to upskill ourselves in our use of technologies? Do we need to be more aware that this is how people will communicate? Another thing you may have discovered about your patterns of media use that is significant is that you may not actually build in any time to kind of just shut off, be able to put away all the media and technology and just be kind of still. Spend time with individuals, develop personal relationships, or just in a place where you're not being affected or bombarded with other messages. Because that leads us to another potential significant thing to discuss, and that is the effect it has on our health. Is all this use of technology actually changing the way our brain functions? Is it creating new patterns and routines that are unhealthy for us, that are unsustainable? Things that affect our sleep patterns, things that reduce the amount of physical exercise we get. When we look at why all this is important too, we might also consider how we can use this information about our technology and about our use of media as leverage to compete against other people. Are the skills and the use of media something that our employers are going to look for in the future? Is it going to enable you as a student to do better than your competition or other people? By being comfortable with different media, accessing these kind of resources rather than sitting around and waiting for someone to answer a question or being lost, is that going to give you a competitive advantage? The other thing that the survey should have made clear to all of us is that media concept of different people use media in different ways. And if we want to get our message across, we have to understand that people use it for different reasons. And for us to effectively enact change, for us to get what we need or what we want, we have to then understand why other people use media. And then linking back to the uses and gratifications theory, we can also look at it from a standpoint of, looking at these patterns, looking back over everything. The reason it's significant is it helps us understand what needs are being satisfied and whether those needs are actually in balance. Well, we had 5 needs, or according to the uses and gratification theory, we use media for 5 needs. We use it so that we can be informed and educated. We use it as a means of social interaction to communicate with people. We use it to be entertained. We use it to kind of escape from our daily lives and the stress and the pressure that we might have at work or at school or at home. And finally, sometimes we use it to help us get a better idea of who we are. And the media we watch might reflect our background, our culture, our interests, our identity. So by looking at our surveys now, we can perhaps notice that our needs aren't balanced. I look at that, and I look at mine, for example, and I see that I've escaped 27 times throughout the week, but all my other needs are maybe 4 or 5. That should send a kind of a red flag or a warning bell to me that if I'm spending all my time using media escaping, what am I escaping from? So these are the kind of things we talked about in class as being a starting point to develop your final summary. What we want to do in this little video here is then talk about how do you take one of these points, how do you write it up as a summary, and then finally, how do we support any of that with any additional evidence or reference to the theories we talked about in class, the needs we discussed, or any other online research you find might be relevant to supporting your point. So that's where we're going to start from here. I'm going to start by kind of drafting out that paragraph. Thanks for hanging around so far. We'll get to start drafting next. So here we go. The first place we have to start, obviously, is our topic sentence. And a topic sentence obviously introduces our findings and reflection. So this is where I might start by simply saying, one reason I believe it is significant or important to examine our use of media is to better understand the reasons we use it in our daily lives. So I simply started there just by giving you a topic sentence. By now, like any piece of writing, should probably provide a little bit more of an explanation. This is where I expand on my idea. There is a lot of media content that we interact with on a daily basis. So much content there is so much content that we don't actually think about what we are using or why. As a result, we might become dependent. Or, no, I'll use the word numb to the messages that are being sent through the media. By looking at our use, we can reflect. Consider why we use what we do. Now we're on to some examples. And our examples can come from a wide variety of areas. They can come from our surveys. They can come from research that we've done on the internet. They can be class notes or discussions. And I might just start with fairly straightforward. For example, when I look over my survey data, I realized that I used digital media exclusively to escape from the grind of school and home. I use media for escape at least 50 times, whereas all my other use was less than 20. This made me realize that I have become dependent on media to escape, rather than deal with the issues from the day or seek other solutions. Now already what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've included information from my surveys. Well, I can include in some research as well. And I can say according to the uses and gratifications theory, which we studied as part of the unit, which is in your workbook. People are active users of media. And one of the main they use media is to escape from reality. So I've gone ahead and now backed it up with some research as well. Some examples from the use and gratification theory. Finally, now that I've gone ahead and done that, I have to kind of now summarize and go back to my topic sentence. I have to go back up to say that I found this was significant to better understand the reasons we use it in our daily lives. Well, if I'm going to now kind of summarize my topic sentence, and in doing so, I can state the significance I'm going to need to kind of make that kind of big realization of what was the point. And this is where I can get a little bit philosophical, a little bit deep, and I can say, when we as people understand how and why we use media, we regain control over the media and its effects on us. If, however, we don't consider its impacts or effects we may become prone to becoming even more dependent and perhaps less likely to change our behaviors. Now, again, there's no necessarily research that's going to back this up, but it does certainly talk about the significance and expands on why a better understanding of how we use media can impact our lives. So what I've got there now is just a couple of small paragraphs. If I take away these little headings, this is what my summary should read. Now, remember, the goal of the summary is to kind of state what we think is the significance of it and be able to support that with a bit of explanation, perhaps a little bit of research from either our surveys, online research, or the research in your book. So here we go. If we start from the top, one reason I believe it is significant or important to examine our use, now you find the typos when you read it out loud to yourself, of media is to better understand the reasons we use it in our daily lives. And there's a lot of media content that we interact with on a daily basis. There's so much content that we actually don't think about what we are using or why. As a result, we might become dependent or numb to the messages that are being sent through the media. By looking at our use, we can reflect and consider why we use what we do. For example, when I look over my survey data, I realize that I use media or digital media exclusively to escape from the grind of school and home. I use media to escape at least 50 times, whereas all my other media use was less than 20. This made me realize that I become dependent on media to escape rather than deal with issues from the day or seek solutions. And according to the uses and gratification theory, people are active users of media, and one of the main reasons they use media is to escape from reality. When we as people understand how and why we use media, we regain control over the media and its effects on us. If, however, we don't consider its impacts or effects, we may become more prone to becoming more dependent and perhaps less likely to change our behaviors. So we've stated its significance there. We've gone ahead and supported it with a little bit of examples, and it gives us something to think about, a chance to have that comprehensive look at why it's important. I hope this has helped in terms of looking at how you can write and how you can structure that final summary, and obviously have a listening class, have a chat about it. If you're concerned or have any questions, email me at sjarek@fieldinghigh.school.nz or respond via the chat function in our Microsoft Teams. All right, well, thank you very much. Best of luck drafting your summary, and we'll obviously work through that in class today. Have a good day.